Of the city of Ur, Yahweh said, Now shall the isles tremble in the day of thy fall. Yea, the isles that are in the sea shall be dismayed at thy departure. For thus saith the Lord Yahweh, when I shall make thee a desolate city, like the cities that are not inhabited, when I shall bring up the deep upon thee, and the great waters shall cover thee, then will I bring thee down with them that descend into the pit, to the people of old time, and will make thee to dwell in the nether parts of the earth, in the places that are desolate of old, with them that go down to the pit, that thou be not inhabited, and I will set glory in the land of the living. I will make thee a terror, and thou shalt no more have any being. Though thou be sought for, yet shalt thou never be found again, saith the Lord Yahweh. Ezekiel chapter 27. The word of Yahweh came again to me, saying, And thou, son of Adam, take up a lamentation over Thor, and say to Thor, O thou that dwellest at the entry of the sea, that art the merchant of the peoples to many isles, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Thou, O Thor, hast said, I am perfect in beauty. Thy borders are in the heart of the seas. Thy builders have perfected thy beauty. They have made all thy planks of fir trees from Shanir. They have taken a cedar from Lebanon to make a mast for thee. Oaks from Bashan have they made thy oars. They have made thy benches of ivory, inlaid in boxwood, from the isles of Kittim. Of fine linen with broidered work from Mithraim was thy sail, that it might be to thee for an ensign. Blue and purple from the isles of Rishah was thy awning. The inhabitants of Thidon and Arwad were thy rowers. Thy wise men, O Thor, were in thee. They were thy pilots. The old men of Gubal and the wise men thereof were in thee, thy caulkers. All the ships of the sea with their mariners were in thee to deal in thy merchandise. Paras and Lud and Put were in thy army, thy men of war. They hanged the shield and helmet in thee. They set forth thy comeliness. The men of Arwad with thy army were upon thy walls round about, and valorous men were in thy towers. They hanged their shields upon thy walls round about. They have perfected thy beauty. Tarshish was thy merchant, by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with silver, iron, tin, and lead, they traded for thy wares. Yoan, Tobal, and Moshok, they were thy traffickers. They traded the soul of man and vessels of copper for thy merchandise. They of the house of Togarmah traded for thy wares with horses and war horses and mules. The men of Dadan were thy traffickers, many isles were the tradership of thy hand. They brought thee in exchange horns of ivory and ebony. Aram was thy merchant by reason of the multitude of thy handiworks. They traded for thy wares with garnet, purple, and broidered work, and fine linen, and coral, and rubies. Yehudah and the land of Yisrael, they were thy traffickers. They traded for thy merchandise wheat of Maneth, and panug, and honey, and oil, and balm. Dameshach was thy merchant for the multitude of thy handiworks, by reason of the multitude of all kinds of riches, with wine of hellebore and white wool. Wadan and Yorwan traded with yarn for thy wares. Bright iron, cassia, and calamus were among thy merchandise. Dadan was thy trafficker in precious cloths for riding. Arab and all the princes of Kedar, they were the merchants of thy land, in lambs and rams and goats. In these were they thy merchants. The traffickers of Shabah and Ramah, they were thy traffickers. They traded for thy wares with the chief of all spices, and with all precious stones and gold. Haran and Kaneh and Eden, the traffickers of Shabah, Ashur and Kalamad, were thy traffickers. These were thy traffickers in choice wares, in wrappings of blue and broidered work, and in chests of rich apparel, bound with cords and made of cedar, among thy merchandise. The ships of Tarshish were thy caravans for thy merchandise. And thou wast filled, and thou wast heavy, tremendously, in the heart of the seas. Thy rowers have brought thee into great waters. The east wind hath broken thee in the heart of the seas. Thy riches and thy wares, thy merchandise, thy mariners and thy pilots, thy caulkers and the dealers in thy merchandise, and all thy men of war that are in thee, with all thy company which is in the midst of thee, shall fall into the heart of the seas in the day of thy ruin. At the sound of the cry of thy pilots, the suburbs shall shake. And all that handled the oar, the mariners and all the pilots of the sea, shall come down from their ships. They shall stand upon the land, and shall cause their voice to be heard over thee, and shall cry bitterly, and shall cast up dust over their heads. They shall wallow themselves in the ashes, and they shall make themselves bald for thee, and gird them with sackcloth, and they shall weep for thee in bitterness of soul, with bitter mourning. And in their wailing they shall take up a lamentation for thee, and lament over thee, saying, Who is there like Thor, like her that is brought to silence in the midst of the sea? When thy wares went forth out of the seas, thou filledst many people. Thou didst enrich the kings of the earth with the multitude of thy riches and of thy merchandise. In the time that thou wast broken by the seas, in the depths of the waters, thy merchandise and all thy company did fall in the midst of thee. All the inhabitants of the isles are astonished at thee, and their kings are horribly afraid. They are troubled in their countenance. The merchants among the peoples hiss at thee. Thou art become a terror, and thou shalt nevermore have any being.